Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. You're listening to a new The Hacker Factory podcast with hacker maker Phillip Wylie. You're about to discover what the role of a professional hacker entails, the different specializations it holds, and what it takes to learn and become one. Enjoy the conversation as Phillip and guests unveil the secrets of professional hacking, a mysterious, intriguing, and often misunderstood occupation. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Hello and welcome to the Hacker Factory. I'm your host, Phillip Wylie. I refer to myself as the Hacker Maker because I love teaching pen testing and mentoring aspiring pen testers. And this show is an extension of that passion. And each episode, I bring someone on that's a hacker, pen tester, or some sort of offensive security professional to share their unique stories and how to get started in pen testing. And today I'm honored to have Tib3rius with us. Tib3rius, could you introduce yourself and welcome to the show?
Thank you. It's good to be here. So yeah, like Phillip said, I'm Tib3rius. I've been a web app pen tester for the last 10 years, roughly. I started out doing a mixture of testing, but decided pretty early on that I would like to specialize in web app testing specifically. So that's pretty much where I've been for the last 10 years. I've jumped around a few companies, currently working at White Oak Security, which is a great firm. Effectively just hires seniors. It's a nice place for senior testers who are already sort of rooted in what they want to do. So yeah, that's me.
So, sounds interesting. That's pretty cool that they're hiring senior level people. So you must get to do some pretty cool work there. So what was your background like? What did you do to get started as a pen tester? What's your education? How did you learn to become a pen tester?
Yeah, so I always describe my sort of foray into InfoSec or cybersecurity was kind of weird. So I went to, obviously, I'm from the UK. I live in Boston right now, but originally from the UK, I went to university to do computer science. And in the second year, they gave us options to sort of do a minor. Because obviously the university system is a little different over there. You don't really do a huge amount of subjects. So mostly I was doing computer science. In second year, they gave us options. One of them was information security, which looked interesting. So I thought, I'll give that a go. Prior to that, I guess I had sort of messed around with a few things like Hack This Site, if anyone can remember that from back in the day. So I did the sort of the minor in information security. And then once I graduated, I figured, well, actually, this is kind of pen testing and everything is a nice career path for me. So I'll do a master's in information security at the same university. So after I did the master's, I pretty much didn't do what everyone seems to do, which is either become a sysadmin or join a SOC. I kind of leapt straight into not exactly pen testing, but doing analysis, security checks for a company that had an auditing product. So we were writing the actual security checks for that. And after 9 months, I figured, that's probably enough experience. So I applied to be a junior pen tester at a company in the UK, and somehow that worked. So that was basically the start of my career.
Oh, that's great. It's interesting because the different paths you hear people take, because you see some people that get into pen testing, they have like zero college, zero academic background, and they just kind of learn. And then, some people without certifications, and it's interesting to see the different paths because, some people are always asking the biggest question, do I need a degree or certifications? And that's different for everyone. I try not to discourage people because, there's good things you can learn from college, about IT and technology and security in general. So that's interesting to share that because, that's the, biggest question you get asked. So you're specializing now in application pen testing. So what got you into that area? So you did kind of a broad range of pen testing, and then you end up finding that you enjoyed the application stuff more?
Yeah. So obviously this was 10 years ago, but as a junior, I would obviously be put on tests with senior people. So they were a mixture. We do network, we do application. I just tended to enjoy the web application stuff more. I think it's because web apps are so much more varied than networks a lot of the time. And so it really depends. Especially with, like, back then, there was just a huge boom in companies developing web apps instead of thick client apps. So you would have even these internal applications. We're not even talking about like websites, but internal web apps were taking over the previously created thick client apps that they would install across their organization. And so you would still be pen testing those. So I think it was just the amount of variation was really attractive because it meant that it just didn't get too boring. The standard web app test is usually 1 to 2 weeks, depending on complexity. So it was every 2 weeks there was something new to do, and sort of trying to understand how the actual web application worked at the back end from like a completely white hat perspective was really interesting.
So did you have any in your classes, like in the university, when you were going through your courses, did you do any kind of development, any kind of programming classes that helped you?
Yeah. So in my original bachelor's for computer science, we focused on a few programming languages, mostly Java. But I also learned some Python, which I think both of those, to be honest, have been really helpful in my career. Python for obvious reasons. Like I don't meet many pen testers who don't like Python. It's just super quick. You can, create nice scripts. Obviously nowadays, like, people are more varied. I guess they're going into Go and Rust, which is fine, but I still have a sweet spot for Python. But Java, which I guess is kind of probably more uncommon in terms of, a pen testing language, is actually really useful if you ever want to code a burp extension. You can code burp extensions in Python technically, but it's just way easier to do it in Java. So that's really become kind of handy because a lot of engagements, especially if you come across a complex web app that uses some really weird authentication mechanism, and you want to integrate it into burp to scan better or use intruder better, then sometimes it just requires you to create a small burp extension just to make sure everything works.
That's pretty interesting that you mentioned that. So it's for anyone out there that's wanting to do burp extensions, it may still be worth learning Java. I took some courses through WGU several years ago before I started teaching because I was actually taking the software development program because that's one area I didn't have any experience in. So I did that for a while. So I took a Java class. So that's interesting. A lot of times people are asking, do you need to know how to code when you're starting out? And I always share it's good to have. I mean, you don't have to have it to get started, but eventually something that you want to, because, some of the best pen testers I know out there, are able to write their own tools and scripts. So pretty Cool that you write your own extensions. So what are some of the extensions you have out there? Do you have them open to the public?
Yeah, so one of them is called the cross-site request forgery scanner, which I created back in, I think, 2016. So that one actually got pretty popular just because at the time Burp didn't have a very good ability to detect cross-site request forgery issues. Obviously nowadays that's kind of it's kind of out of date, to be honest. I haven't updated it in several years, and now with same site cookies and everything, we have less cross-site request forgeries. But there are some like private ones that I've developed at companies I've worked for, mostly to integrate into customer-specific authentication. So without giving away too much information, there was one API test that we did where they used a completely what's the word? Proprietary. That was it. Proprietary authentication mechanism, which they gave us access to, which was, effectively impossible to do via burp. So in the end, I ended up actually coding a Python library, because burp does use Python. Technically, you can do it via a programming language called Jython, which is basically Python interpreted by Java. But this customer library was written in Python, so I effectively sort of integrated it in a really messy, hacky way. But there's a few others that I have that I've used in the past. I just think a lot of the time, if you have enough time on a test, and writing a quick extension is going to make your life easier, then it's definitely worth doing.
No, very interesting. So yeah, it's pretty cool that you're writing your own Python. Your own Burp Suite extension. So that's pretty cool. That's something I haven't done. Would be interesting to learn how to do. So do you do any kind of bug bounty stuff, or you just?
Technically, yes. I just don't have much of the time to do it. Obviously, I'm a full-time pen tester, so doing bug bounty work on the side is something that I've looked into. It's I think if you want to actually make money off of it, you really have to dedicate quite a lot of time to it. And I've just got too many other projects going on. It's definitely something I always keep sort of in my peripheral, just in case, I want to go back to it. But yeah, I understand for a lot of people, it's a good way. And I actually have a friend who is still in college, but he recently became one of the top 100 bug bounty hunters. So, it's definitely, I think, a way in to the industry, because it shows you can at least share your statistics with a potential employer. And, this guy has made quite a lot of money already, but he's also, top 100 in Bugcrowd. He has shout outs from Bugcrowd on their Twitter. So that's all stuff that you can show to a potential employer. For me, as someone who has done interviews and hired people before, that is experience, in my opinion. So, it doesn't necessarily, when you see a job application that says, you need 3 years of experience, well, I think working for bug bounties in your spare time counts towards some of that. So
that's good to hear. I was interviewing over the summer last year for pen testing jobs, and the guy was a hiring manager for a pretty well-known boutique pen testing firm in the U.S. And one of the things he had mentioned, that it was easier for them to find web app pen testers because of bug bounty. Not to discourage anyone from doing bug bounty, there's still a big need for it. But for me, that was validation that bug bounty helps, because I got involved with bug bounty just from following different bug hunters, like Jason Haddix, kind of learning some of their tools and tricks because it was helpful as a pen tester. And so when I started teaching, I was recommending people do bug bounties to get experience. And so that was validation that this is actually something that's useful, that people are counting for experience. So that's good to know. So I guess one of the tough things is, if you're trying to bug bounty, if you are a pen tester, is dedicating that time to that, because I spent the first 5 years of my pen testing career as a consultant, and then I went working for companies internally, but I could do bug bounty on the side. But then when I could find people to hire me to do pen testers, I could get paid and get money, the sure thing. So it's kind of hard to dedicate a lot of money, a lot of time into doing that.
Yeah, that is the thing with bug bounty hunting. There's not the initial return of investment. And for some people, I imagine there's a lot of investment and absolutely no return. And that probably is kind of demoralizing. But I think, I recommend people do Bugcrowd over HackerOne, and that's only because Bugcrowd doesn't really punish you for finding duplicates. They still tend to award points, whereas HackerOne, I've seen people get docked points for duplicates on HackerOne, which just seems harsh. So wow. I'm not sure if that's still the case. But in my opinion, if you want to at least dip your toes in the water of bug bounty hunting, I would definitely sign up to Bugcrowd at least. They have quite a number of good programs as well. So that's definitely what I would recommend. And then perhaps go to HackerOne once you've got some experience.
Yeah. And one of the things I share with people too, they talk about, I'll talk to people online, they'll DM me on Twitter, and they found this bug and it was a duplicate, and you can't really get down yourself. At least you're finding stuff. I mean, you want to make money, but as far as if your goal is to be a pen tester or even bug hunter, if you're finding duplicates, eventually you're going to find it before someone else. You are making progress.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, one of the interesting things is to see some of the people that do bug bounty that actually do that full time. Like Today Is New, to find out that guy makes the kind of money he makes and he does that full time. And the automation aspect is really what's interesting. That's why I kind of asked you, because with your background and writing the extensions and stuff, I figured you're probably pretty good at automating stuff. So that's why I was curious if you were doing any bug hunting.
Yeah, I probably would automate it if I got into it properly. Because I think that is the key. If you can automate as much as possible, then you can, let the scripts find stuff for you. But I find a lot of the time, the automated stuff is just going to find you duplicates, and the real money seems to be in doing the sort of deep diving. There's really two methodologies. The one where you basically spray and pray, where you effectively have a huge target like Verizon has just a stupid amount of subdomains that are in scope. And so obviously part of the automation there is finding decent subdomains and finding them first and then finding stuff on them. Alternatively, you can go for a kind of narrow scope. So maybe there's a bug platform that has a program where there's like one or two web apps, but they give you like credentials or they give you multiple user roles. And it's more of a web app penetration test in that sense. And you'll probably find more stuff, or at least find less people trying those. Because I feel like a lot in bug bounty hunting, a lot of people go for sort of the wide range of attacks rather than trying to narrow it down.
Makes sense. So if someone's getting started in bug bounty, what would you recommend?
I would recommend reading Jason Alex's bug bounty hunting methodology, honestly, and because he has a ton of good tips in there. But other than that, honestly, just read up on some of the bugs that are public and get an idea of what people are actually trying, because none of these bugs are particularly unique. If they work for one site, they're likely going to be found on another site. So my recommendation would be, just, read as much information as you can, and then just honestly throw yourself into it. Like head first, dive in and try and have fun with it, and try and not get too demoralized. Try, even if you don't, like, say you spend 10 hours and you don't make a single dollar, that's still 10 hours of hunting and experience that you did. So, that's still a learning experience for you. So that was really what I would recommend.
Since we're kind of on the topic of learning, how would you recommend someone is wanting to become a pen tester? What would you recommend them do to get started? What would your methods be?
Oh goodness. Well, I mean, obviously I can't answer that question without mentioning, college is definitely a good way of at least getting some sort of skills. Especially if you can find a good cybersecurity degree, and look around and see what the syllabus is, make sure they're actually, because a lot of universities these days will teach some form of ethical hacking, which is great. So that's definitely a way to go into it. But there are tons of free courses out there. There's I think the Cyber Mentor has a YouTube channel where he has a whole, I think it's 0 to Hero pen testing course for free, which is great. If you want to do more web app stuff, then Portswigger Web Academy is free as well. And Portswigger, the company that make Burp, the CEO of Portswigger also wrote the Web App Hackers Handbook. So that was pretty much the Bible of web app pen testing back in 2007. But the third edition of it is effectively the Web Academy. So they automated it. They have a load of good learning resources, and they also have free labs that you can try. So That's what I would recommend. But other than that, I mean, signing up for Try Hack Me or Hack the Box is always good, even if you have to pay for it sometimes. The amount of learning material that Try Hack Me has is great. Obviously, Hack the Box. Even if you start out reading through walkthroughs and just going through line by line and repeating the steps in the walkthrough, you're still learning something. So I think those resources are all great. A lot of them are free, and even like a Try Hack Me subscription or a Hack the Box subscription doesn't cost that much.
That's great advice. And you were mentioning earlier how you would count, bug hunting as experience. So if you were looking to hire someone and they spend a lot of time on Hack the Box, would you consider that experience?
I think with Hack the Box, it's a little different, just because obviously with retired boxes, you have all the walkthroughs out there. And obviously active boxes change like every week. So it is a little difficult because you might get someone submit their Hack the Box profile and you can't tell really whether they've actually done the work or whether they were just following a walkthrough. And again, there's nothing wrong with following a walkthrough if you're learning, but ideally, if you're looking for experience, you need to be able to differentiate. So what I would definitely recommend is if you can, if you're going to do a Hack the Box or a Try Hack Me room, write up what you did as a walkthrough and submit it somewhere. You can use GitHub Pages if you want to, or submit it to medium.com. And there's another web app pen tester I know, Rana Khalil. She got pretty famous because she basically for her OSCP prep did like so many Hack the Box boxes and then wrote them all up afterwards. And she's also doing a great YouTube series on Portswigger Web Academy as well right now. So I think what she did was incredible. And it definitely shows. I mean, she already works as a pen tester, so she doesn't need to show the experience. But there's no reason why you can't do that. You can't write up the walkthroughs and show that you actually put in the work. That's definitely gonna at least raise eyebrows for a hiring manager.
That's some great advice, and I'm a big fan of hers too. She's got some really good content. I actually reached out to her about being a guest, so hopefully get on her schedule. We'll have her on the show. But yeah, one of the things you're mentioning, one of the companies over the summer I was interviewing with for the pen test, part of the interview was they were going to give you basically some information. You're just going to write up a report to see how you do it. So based on what you're saying there would have been good information, because someone that didn't really have the experience got to that part of the interview, then they could have at least possibly get to go through the report writing phase. And that's a lot of things that people, one of the areas that are overlooked by people getting in to pen testing is the report writing and the soft skills that you need. You can be super technical, but if you're not good at communicating, then that kind of makes it hard for you to advance.
Yeah.
Great advice.
It's the worst and best part of pen testing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Is the writing the report. It's the worst because it sucks.
Yeah.
But it's the best because that's what the customer is paying for. They're not paying you to test a web app. They're paying you to write a report. And yeah, if you don't have report writing skills or you haven't practiced report writing skills, that's something you definitely need to do. Being able to communicate effectively not only what you've done, and how you've exploited something, but how the customer can fix it is incredibly important. And that's why in interviews a lot of the time you won't have necessarily questions about, well, what is SQL injection? You'll have questions like, how do you actually fix SQL injection? Because that's ultimately what you need to know.
Yeah. So on that same note, would you recommend that people learn some of the blue team side? Because if you're going to remediate vulnerabilities, you kind of have to understand that.
I think people should be familiar with the blue team side, especially familiar with the terms like intrusion detection system, firewalls, all that stuff. But in terms of actually like blue team like engagements, I probably know next to nothing about any of that. I'm not sure I would count like developer as part of the blue team. I'm not entirely sure where they lie. But especially if you're talking about sort of web app stuff, the fixes are usually mostly going to be in the code. There's definitely going to be some configuration like web server configuration, for instance. But I think most fixes are going to rely on actual code changes. So you're really talking to the developers ultimately. So being able to explain how they fix it on a code level is always good. Obviously, for network pen testing, it's different. I'm not a network pen tester, but I'm sure writing like mitigation steps for a network pen test will require knowledge of some blue team stuff as well. Yeah.
So what are your view on certifications? We kind of discuss your background and the way you got in. How do you view certifications? Do you think they're helpful? I mean, if you're hiring a pen tester, is that anything you would consider? Are there any certifications that you'd recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think they're important. I don't put much value in a lot of entry level certifications, just because some of the best certs out there just cost money. And I'm a big believer that if you're gonna have a cert, your company really should be trying to pay for it. To show an investment in your development as a tester. So I think, obviously having OSCP as an entry level would look great, but I wouldn't say it's a must-have. I don't necessarily think it's a good entry level cert. I think it's probably a cert that you could do once you've had maybe a year as a junior. I think I would expect any person who's been a junior pen tester for a year could easily do OSCP. But I don't necessarily think it's something that we should be asking complete newbies to be doing. Other than that, yeah, there's some great certifications on eLearn, like the WAPTX. That's pretty good. I'm taking that one right now. And I mean, eLearn has a ton of them that are good. So that's always nice. But I think eLearn and offensive security are kind of like the two titans right now. They're kind of duking it out. So it's interesting, watching them sort of battle each other because they're coming out with better and better certifications, which is only good for the industry as a whole. I think, the competition makes the certs really good.
Yeah, competition is a needed thing, and that's pretty much kind of displayed in the OWASP Zap and Burp Suite. Some of the things that Burp Suite is improved upon because of OWASP Zap and so forth. So that's interesting that you like the INE or the eLearn security certifications. My second year as a pen tester, the first year I worked on the OSCP, and then once I got into the role where I was doing more web app pen testing, I needed more experience in that area, more education. So I went through the web app pen testing cert. I didn't take the certification; I just took the course and then the mobile pen testing courses. So you have some courses yourself out on Udemy. You want to share information on that?
Yeah, so that's like the weirdest story of the last 2 years. So when I was doing my OSCP, I mean, I did my OSCP extremely late. I'd been a pen tester 8 years when I started my OSCP, and it was only because my company were like, "Well, you have a training budget and you haven't used it. Do you want to do OSCP?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So I was doing it, and I found on Reddit, I think, a Discord server called OSCP Prep, which I joined, and I think there were like 500 people there already. So it was a kind of small community, but we were all chatting. We helped each other out in the labs, and that community has actually grown now into what is now the InfoSec Prep Discord server, which I'm an admin of, and we have like 20,000 members now, which is really good.
Wow.
But a couple of years ago, people were complaining about the OSCP in terms of the course materials and saying, they really don't teach you much privilege escalation. There's hardly anything on it in the actual materials, but so many of the labs require it. Obviously, the exam has 3 boxes which require privilege escalation. And I think if you do the calculation, you need at least to privilege escalate once in order to get a pass. So it was a part of the exam, but people weren't really learning. And so I figured, I'll teach a course on it. So I created a Linux privilege escalation course, and then I created a Windows one. They're both on Udemy. And to be honest, I really didn't expect them to get so popular. But I guess I did them right. So, because I think we're at 11,000 students now across both the courses, which is insane. Like I was happy when I got my first 100 students, and now it's like 11,000. So yeah, but I think they're pretty good. They got great reviews. A lot of people say that they're the reason that they passed their OSCP, which I take with a grain of salt. But it's nice to get that kind of feedback. I definitely think the contents of them they're only an hour and a half long each, but they pretty much, I don't waffle. There's no information in there that you don't need. It's all pretty much just explaining the concepts and then doing some demos and showing you how to find these kind of vulnerabilities, especially using tools. Because I'm a big believer, if you're on the OSCP exam, it's time management is huge. So run as many privilege escalation tools as you can.
Yeah, I can attest to seeing the comments on your courses, because I've seen people that said that helped them pass the OSCP. I see a lot of good feedback on it, so that's good. It's out there. I like the short and to the point methodology, because when I was writing my book, I had a hard time coming up with close to 200 pages for the book. And that's one of the reasons I brought Kim in to help me finish the book, because, for me, I just like short and to the point. I don't want a story. I want the information and get going with it. Yep. So we're getting down pretty close to the end of the show. Is there anything you'd like to share that we hadn't discussed so far?
Oh, goodness. I'm not sure. I think we've talked about quite a range of subjects. I guess I would definitely recommend, if you are interested in the industry, my main advice, other than the stuff we've talked about, is really just start getting your name out there. Definitely join Twitter. The InfoSec Twitter community. Yeah, we can be a bit boisterous at sometimes, but I think mostly we're kind of a nice big family. There's a lot of support you'll get there. Obviously, join Discord. I'd love you to join the InfoSec Prep Discord server. We don't just do OSCP stuff now, as you'll note from the name change. We're pretty much, just trying to help people with their careers, whether they're just starting out or whether you've been in the industry for 3 years and you're looking, to move on. There's just a huge community there. Everyone's so helpful, and a lot of people just discussing things all the time. So I think that, and obviously if you are able to code things and you're able to code little scripts, then obviously put them on GitHub, make them public, license them properly, make sure, try and use open source licenses as much as possible, because sharing is caring. You never know who can find your code and use it in some engagement and get somewhere. So I think that's that's the advice that I would give.
Well, awesome. It was great having you on the show. It was great to finally talk to you, and I look forward to the day we get to meet in real life.
Absolutely.
The pandemic has been tough on the conferences and getting to go to meetups and stuff. So I look forward to it. Thanks for joining us, and I'm sure everyone's going to enjoy this episode.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Phillip.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Hacker Factory podcast with Phillip Wylie. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.